today on a powerful, all-new Dr. Phil exclusive. Their daughter was killed on Halloween night.
I collapsed to the ground and screamed.
Her boyfriend claimed she shot herself.
That's one heck of a shot if you can do that.
How was his behavior at the funeral?
Oh, he put on a good show, wailing and crying.
So he went to the police station and confessed.
We just got the transcript of the 911 call.
This is the first time we've heard this.
Kaylin Whitaker, Confessions of Her Killer, a Dr. Phil exclusive.
Before COVID-19 took over the news and shut down our studios, we taped an interview about the mysterious murder of a beautiful young woman named Kaylin Whitaker. The 20-year-old was found dead in her boyfriend Connor's home in October 2014. At the time, Connor told police he was awakened by a gunshot and claimed Kaylin had committed suicide.
Kaylin Whitaker died in 2014, Halloween night, under suspicious circumstances in Martinsville, Illinois.
Kaylin Whitaker was found dead in her boyfriend Connor Scott's home. Her family has been fighting for justice ever since.
Nobody should have to die the way my daughter did. When Kaylin passed away, she was 20 years old. It was Halloween. 2 police officers pulled up in front of our home. They first asked Dave, "Are you Kaylin Whitaker's father?" And he said, "Yes, sir, I am." Then I heard them say, "We're very sorry to tell you this, but Kaylin is deceased." My first thought was, oh my God, he killed her. I collapsed down to the ground and began screaming. And that's when our nightmare began.
Kaylin Whitaker was found with a gunshot wound to the head. They were a couple at the time. Initially, the death appeared to be a suicide.
There was no way that she would have ended her own life. Not my daughter.
Then, in a shocking twist, almost 5 years after Kaylin's death, her case, which seemed to have gone cold, was brought back to life when her boyfriend made a gruesome confession. Connor walked into an Indiana police station and admitted to police that Kaylin's death was not a suicide at all. She was murdered, and he was her killer.
Kaylin Whitaker was with Scott the day she died. At first, investigators said it was a suicide, but that was later changed to homicide. And then last night, here in Danville, Indiana, case solved when a man walked through these doors at the Danville Police Department and said he did it. There's no word on why Scott may have wanted to kill his fiancée.
I don't think we'll ever get closure. She died very tragically, and that goes through my mind a lot. Nobody should have to die the way my daughter did.
She was a beautiful girl. She's the greatest thing in my life.
It's so hard to lose a child, and to lose a child to murder is the worst thing you could ever go through.
So glad to sit down with y'all, and so sorry for the circumstance. I wish we were meeting for 1,000 other reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Besides this, I just can't even imagine. For people that don't know, describe what happened here.
Kaylin met a young man that she thought was going to be her knight in shining armor, basically. Connor Scott. And we loved him. Thought he was fantastic. He was a gentleman around us, good to us. He adored Kaylin. You could just see it on his face. He just adored that girl, and she adored him. And so they started a relationship together. They were inseparable. They liked being together. It was hard keeping them apart.
And how old were they when they first met?
They were right around 19 years old.
And did you like him?
Yeah, he was real friendly, real nice, real polite. He was a good kid.
He had a lot of goals, and he was interested in being a police officer, so he was going to go into some kind of criminal background, from what I understand.
Okay, now, how long had they been dating when they moved in together?
I would say probably a good 12 months. dating,
Okay.
yeah.
So they knew each other well by the time they moved in together.
Very much so, yes. And he would come to the house and pull up in this black pickup truck, and I'd watch her run through the living room and jump into his arms. She couldn't wait to see him, and he couldn't wait to see her.
I've read everything that you guys have taught us about this so far. There were control issues. He seemed to be jealous, and even if she was with friends or something,
yes.
It wasn't just like if he was with some guy or whatever.
Yes.
And about a month before they moved in, they actually broke up, right?
Yes, for about a month period of time, yes.
And what precipitated that? What brought that on? Was it the control issue?
Yes.
Had Kaylin had enough?
Yes. Kaylin had had enough. She couldn't do anything without him intervening with anything she did.
She'd blow up her phone if she wasn't there.
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, the last friend that she was with before, he killed her, she said that the whole time they were together, he would not leave her alone. He called her, and it got to the point where Kaylin, just decided, I'm just going to ignore him. And she didn't get to see her friends very often because, see, she lived in Terre Haute. He lived in Martinsville, Illinois. So she came home, well, just to basically spend some time with her friends. From what I understand from her friend is that the night progressed, and the friend said, please stay here, it's late. And she told the friend that no, Connor would be mad at her and that she better get back.
So she didn't feel the freedom to be who she was, do what she wanted to do.
I don't think so at all.
What was it about him, you think, that made him insecure about her?
He just thought that she was just this beautiful young woman, and he was scared to death that he was going to lose her.
Me is trust.
Yeah.
Did you guys have the sense that he felt like he was trading up with her, that he was over his head with her?
Kaylin was very confident, in everything she did. She was beautiful. I think he was thinking that she was kind of out of his league. He grew, like I said, so attached to her.
Because I've been trying to figure, from a psychological standpoint, I've been trying to think about this too. And if you feel like, I've hit the lottery here, and if she ever has 5 minutes to be away from me and look around, she's going to figure out she's way out of my league and she's going to replace me in a heartbeat. I'm just wondering if he lived with that fear.
He may have, I really do believe that he felt like that Kaylin may leave him for some odd reason and just out of the blue. We don't know what happened that evening when he actually did it. We don't know yet if there was an argument between them, and he was like, oh, you're not leaving me, this is, and then he did what he did. All along, there's been some strong insecurities, and you could just see it, the red flags.
You said you had a mother's instinct that things were starting to get really off track. Tell me about that.
Well, I felt like Kaylin was kind of distancing herself from me, because I would call her and it would take a couple days before she would even get back with me. It was just really tough to get a hold of her. And then there would be times where I would ask to do stuff with her, and I'd always say, Connor can come along with us, and she'd say, well, I'll have to wait and see, and I don't know yet. And that wasn't Kaylin, because beforehand it was like, well, sure, Mom, I'd love to do that,
But you had this instinct, and it was because she was distancing herself.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right.
And that just wasn't Kaylin, because she loved being around us. She loved being around her family, And
you sense that difference. And the night Kaylin was killed, you say that she had been out with a friend, and Connor was blowing up her phone, and she stopped responding.
Yeah.
Okay, so hours go by and it's getting late. You say instead of staying with her friend, she decided to go home to Connor.
Yeah.
Because she was afraid he would be mad.
Yeah, she had told her friend that she was scared to go back to him.
Right.
And she tried to get Kaylin to stay with her.
So she decides to go home because she knows she'll be mad. And that was one of the last decisions she ever made.
Yes.
A decision that led to her death.
Coming up.
What do you think happened? What do you think happened when she walked back in there that night?
We now return to a Dr. Phil exclusive.
Kaylin decides to go home because she knows she'll be mad, and that was one of the last decisions she ever made.
Yes.
A decision that led to her death.
Yes.
What do you think happened? What do you think happened when she walked back in there that night?
Maybe they got into an argument because she knew Connor well enough that he was going to be upset with her. And maybe Kaylin said something like, I might just go back home. I can't handle this obsessiveness, or you getting mad because I go to Terre Haute to see my friends. Maybe that was just it for Kaylin, and she's like, I'm done, Connor.
Enough's enough.
Enough's enough.
When was the last time you saw Kaylin?
Her and Leslie went to the Covered Bridge Festival. I came home from work, and she's like, oh, Dad, it's nice to see you. And I said, you too, sweetie. And she goes, well, I can't stay very long. And I do remember she turned around and she goes, don't forget I have a phone. You can call me anytime. And I said, well, I have a phone too. I said, you can call me. And then we just both laughed.
What was the last thing you said to her?
Well, we had spent the day at the Covered Bridge Festival, had a beautiful day together, shopped like we did, and we had fun. We bought these incense candles, and when we got home, we popped them onto the coffee table, and we bought like 10 of them, and we were smelling them, and I was cutting them in half so we could share them. She said, well, I better get back. I said, well, honey, Dad's gonna be home. I said, I want you to stay here so you can see Dad. And she said, well, Connie will get mad at me, so I better go back. And I was very aggravated with that. And I said, Kaylin, you know, if he gets upset about that, then that's just wrong. So she decided she's gonna stick around. But, you know, she was always afraid that he was gonna get angry.
And what was the last thing you said to her when she left?
I said, I love you. And I said, I love spending time with my baby girl. I gave her a big hug and a kiss. I said, drive carefully.
How did y'all find out that she was deceased?
We had 2 police officers come to our home. It was Halloween. They came to the house, and they came in, and they said, are you Mr. Whitaker? And Dave says, yes. And he goes, and your daughter is Kaylin Whitaker? And he says, yes. He said, well, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but Kaylin is deceased. And I stood there. I couldn't really move. I was just like in shock when I heard that. And it's just like very surreal to you, you know what I mean? And as they continued to talk, I could just see their mouths moving, and I couldn't hear anything. And then I walked out the back door, and I collapsed to the ground and screamed over and over again.
And did they tell you what had happened?
They didn't know. They just knew she passed away. They didn't know anything. I guessed it was a car wreck. And those two, even the younger cop, they were really nice. They stayed at the house for almost 2 hours, trying to get a hold of the coroner and to the sheriff over there, because they wanted to know what happened too, but they didn't know anything. They just knew she passed away.
And when you found out how she had really died, how did you find that out?
I had called his mother, and I said, what happened? I remember saying that. And she said, Kaylin shot herself. And I said, what? And she said, Kaylin shot herself. And she repeated again. And I said, I don't understand this. I really don't understand what you're saying here. And she said, well, that's what we were told.
They weren't home when all this happened. So by the time they got back to the house, it was already roped off. And she gets on the phone and says, Kaylin shot herself. And I said, how do you know that? And she said, that's what they told me. I said, that's who told you? She said, them guys here. And I said, I don't believe you. I said, I'm trying to get a hold of the coroner, or I'm trying to get a hold of the sheriff. I said, I have to go. I said, I can't talk to you no more. I don't believe what you're telling me. And I hung up on her.
Well, did you ever find out who she was talking about?
No.
There was a hysterical caller requesting an ambulance, and the caller, this was Connor. What was his story about what happened that night? What did he tell 911?
We haven't heard that
We
yet.
haven't heard any evidence.
We haven't heard any of the details as far as the confession goes or the 911 call or anything like that yet.
We just got the transcript yesterday of the 911 call. I can read it to you if you would like for me to.
Coming up.
He was a good liar. That's all I have to say.
He's really not a very good liar. There are glaring signs of deception here in what he's saying.
We now return to Kaylin Whitaker, Confessions of Her Killer, a Dr. Phil exclusive.
We just got the transcript yesterday of the 911 call. I can read it to you if you would like for me to.
Yes.
This was 10/31/2014 at 11:55:58 a.m. And the caller, this was Connor, requesting an ambulance to this address. And he says, quote, "A gun went off and my girlfriend's been shot in the head." And he advised that they are in the bedroom in the basement at 11:03. He could not tell if she's breathing. At 12 o'clock, he advised there was no one else in the house. She is not responding. She is not breathing. And he advised he woke up to the sound of a gunshot. He was laying in bed next to her. The operator says she shot herself. His response is, "I don't think so. I don't know." He advised he was sleeping and heard a gunshot. Then he woke up in the bedroom. She is still in bed. The gun is on the floor. "You said you don't think she did this?" His response, "I don't think she would do that to herself." Then the operator says, "Was there anyone else in the house?" "No." "Is there any sign or evidence that anyone else was in the house?" "No." Then he says, "Oh my God, she's dead. She is dead." And then what sounded like, "You don't know. I was going to marry her. She wears a ring." What's your reaction to this?
Well, it's this is the first time we've heard this, but I'm glad you did read it because I wanted to hear that. He was a good liar. That's all I have to say.
We tried to get the audio and they say they no longer have access to it. What's your reaction to this?
Honestly, when I first heard what happened, I thought it was an accident. But you get to hear so much more after they investigate things. You never hear the bad stuff till it's too late.
Part of my professional training is in forensic psychology. And I have to disagree with you about one thing. You said he's a good liar. He's really not a very good liar here. There are glaring signs of deception here in what he's saying. A gun went off. The gun just went off, like it just got up and went off. That doesn't happen. It's like distancing themselves from this. And my girlfriend, it's not his girlfriend, it's Kaylin. He's not using her name. This is someone that you love. This is someone that you're close to. Mm-hmm. He never uses her name here, which again is when someone's trying to distance themselves from something that they've done, they backpedal from that and they use these transitives. A gun went off. It's not like, oh my God, somebody has shot Kaylin in the head. My girlfriend Kaylin, she's been shot. There's just two of them there.
Right.
It's like either she shot herself or you shot her. There's nobody else there. I don't think so. I don't know. He's afraid to just out and out lie, but he's afraid to own it.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to take a position. And then they say, you say you don't think she did this? I don't think she would do that to herself. She and herself. Again, he won't say her name.
Right.
And then so, okay, let's look at her psychological composition. Okay, that's why I ask you, what was your last interaction with her? And you tell me. Hey, I got a phone, Dad. Yeah, I got one too. Ha ha, we're laughing. You guys are shopping, having a wonderful day. There's no signs of withdrawal, no signs of depression. There is forward thinking being evidenced. You're dividing up candles.
Right.
If she's not going to be alive tomorrow, why does she need candles? When you see people evidencing forward thinking, it's because they intend to be here tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
But yet they ruled this suicide.
Right.
At first, what was it, undetermined?
Right. But that was because Martinsville is so little, the coroner there didn't have the equipment to take care of this.
They had to call in somebody.
Right. They called in Dr. Core.
The police said it was suicide.
But Dr. Core did not.
When Dr. Core got a hold of it, he said homicide. Did the police question Connor as a suspect?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
And what was the outcome of that?
Coming up.
Did he attend the funeral?
Oh, yeah. He put on a good show. Dave said he thought he heard the fabric from the inside of the casket ripping because he was just grasping it.
We now return to a Dr. Phil exclusive.
Did the police question Connor as a suspect?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
And what was the outcome of that?
They brought him in for interrogation. Connor told his story of exactly what happened, and they let him go.
What was their explanation for not arresting Connor at that point?
That's a good question.
He said he was at 50-50.
Yeah.
He couldn't prove that it was a homicide, and he couldn't prove it was a suicide.
So they ultimately decide that it is a homicide, and they made that determination 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the state prosecutor steps in.
You knew for sure she didn't kill herself.
Yeah. When I knew she didn't kill herself was the day that Mr. Shoemaker called us. It's called a stents, I think, which will be the tattoo that puts on your head when the bullet goes in. Well, the bullet never left Kaylin's head, so that means the gun's farther away. So he calls us on the phone, and he's telling us how all this works. And he goes, "You got to measure 3 inches behind Leslie's ear and 1 inch up." So we got a ruler, and we did that, and I stuck my finger on the back of Leslie's head, and he said, "Okay, now you have the gun." And I even asked I think you had to get to 25 inches, plus the barrel was 7 or 8 more. Somehow it was 33 inches, something like that.
Right.
Is where we had to get Leslie's hand. I'm like, I can't even get that back that far. And
then you got to turn it.
Well, and this is with your left hand. So I asked him, I said, "Kaylin's not left-handed. Are you holding the gun backwards and now you're pulling the trigger with your thumb? Your hand's this way, but the gun's facing it." And he goes, "Yeah, possibly." He goes, "Ask Leslie if she can see her hand." And she said no. I said, "I told you she didn't kill herself." I said, "You can't do that." He said, "That's almost impossible." That's one heck of a shot if you can do that.
And somebody that's going to kill themselves is not going to take that chance.
No.
Did you see Connor after?
We were told that he wanted to come over to the house to talk with us. And immediately the investigator said, "If he does, we're wiring your home." But that never happened.
Did he attend the funeral?
Oh, yeah.
How was his behavior at the funeral?
The show.
Oh, it was a show. He put on a good show. He made a believer out of us. He fell into my arms, put his head into my chest, was wailing and crying during the funeral progression. He calmed down a little bit. And then when it was time to say goodbye to Kaylin, he fell apart again. He walked up to the casket, was just holding on to it, shaking. You could see his arm shaking, and he was crying again.
I thought he was trying to turn it over.
He was just weird. He just had a hold of it. And Dave said he thought he heard the fabric from the inside of the casket ripping because he was just grasping it. And finally, his parents grabbed a hold of him, And they basically had to carry him out of there because he wasn't even walking.
So after the funeral, when was the next time that you heard from him?
He sent me a message, and it said, "Hi, Leslie, this is Connor. I'm not supposed to be reaching out to you right now, but it's killing me." And he said, "I'm just kind of wanting to know how you guys are doing. I think about you." And I was at work when I got that, because it had been a couple years, and I was like, oh, my land.
Okay, so time is going on, and then 4 years pass, and then Connor walks into the police station.
Yep.
And tells him who he is, and straight up confesses to the murder.
Coming up.
Who put him on their radar?
His girlfriend at the time.
You just know he was with another girl.
Yes.
With firearms.
Yes.
And she called the police and said, you need to come take these guns away from him.
We now return to Kaylin Whitaker, Confessions of Her Killer, a Dr. Phil exclusive.
4 years pass, and then Connor walks into the police station, right?
Yep.
And tells him who he is, and straight up confesses to the murder. How did you learn about that? How did you find out that he had done that?
Illinois state police officers came knocking at our door at 5 a.m. in the morning and told us.
And what did they say?
He walked into a police station and said, "I'm Connor Scott. I want to confess that I killed," however he said it. They would just say that this is in our favor, it's good news, and he's arrested.
And what was your reaction?
Shock.
But then he pled not guilty.
Yes.
What'd you make of that?
We've learned that if you plead not guilty, that just basically means that you're trying to get a lesser sentence.
Right.
It was very confusing, yeah.
Right. Then there was no trial.
Mm-hmm.
He went before a judge. Mm-hmm. And the confession was admissible. Mm-hmm. And he was found guilty and sentenced to 37 years.
He
Correct.
plea bargained, right.
Yeah, they pled him to 37.
Right.
Yes.
And he was sentenced to 37 years, and he's not eligible for parole.
No.
How do you feel about that?
I didn't like it whatsoever. We were told that after he was arrested, that an additional charge, gun enhancement charge, for the fact that he had used a firearm, gave us 45 years flat.
Was the minimum.
Was the minimum. And so all this time I'm thinking, okay, well, at least he'll get 45 years on up. The way the prosecutor explained it to me and Dave is if we would have stuck with the gun enhancement charge, that meant the case would have to go to trial.
Right.
And the prosecutor didn't want to do that. He said there's a chance of an acquittal.
Now, there is a red flag rule, and if someone has firearms and they're determined to be emotionally unstable, they can remove their guns. That had happened with him, correct?
Yes.
And that happened how much before the confession?
I think between 2 and 3 weeks before the confession.
And who turned him in, who put him on their radar?
His girlfriend at the time.
Do you know anything about that, how that happened?
Nothing.
You just know he was with another girl.
Yes.
With firearms.
Yes.
And she called the police and said, you need to come take these guns away from him.
We heard that he said that if she left him, he was going to kill himself.
So during this 4 years, you're languishing, suffering, so frustrated because the system, Connor, all of this is still hanging out there.
Yes.
And he's moved on with his life.
Yes.
He's gone on to another girl. He's had a child.
Yes.
He's out there spilling toxicity again.
Yeah.
To the point that she has the presence of mind, thank God, to call the police and have him disarmed.
Mm-hmm. Dave and I went to 2 local news stations prior to that, and I think that he saw those. Dr. Kaur advised us to go to social media, to media, because that man was wonderful to me and Dave. Very supportive.
Well, he did a very good job.
Oh.
I mean, he took all of the evidence, pieced it together, and he did not leave it 50-50. You know, it's interesting. You say Dr. Kaur was very supportive, but he always leaned on science.
Yes.
Because he said, these are the facts. Here's the information. He did the reconstruction. He did everything. And that's what made it so powerful. And you don't know anything about his confession, about what he confessed.
No, we have not heard that.
You don't have any idea what he said, other than he said he did it.
Right.
Correct.
And you want to know.
Yes.
Yes.
What's the impact of him going in and making this confession?
Coming up.
Know that you did a service to your own daughter, and you also saved that woman's life and her child, in my opinion.
We now return to a Dr. Phil exclusive.
For all practical purposes, this was a cold case. Police knew how 20-year-old Kaylin Whitaker died, but they couldn't put all the evidence together to file any charges.
And now, 4 years after she died, they now have a man who they believe pulled the trigger.
Police say Connor Scott walked into the police station in Danville, Indiana, and confessed.
He faces 2 first-degree felony charges and his girlfriend Kaylin Whitaker's death.
What's the impact of him going in and making this confession?
It's taken a lot of stress off of us, of course. I mean, prior to the confession, you just wake up every day and wonder, is this going to be our day? You know?
You wake up every day feeling like there's unfinished business, right?
Very much so.
It's like there's something hanging. You can't quite.
Yeah.
It's like you're mid-step. You can't finish that step. I've been doing this for 45 years. And I can tell you, the reason that this guy has confessed is because he woke up day after day, looked in the mirror and said to himself, these people are never going to let this go.
No.
This is not going to go away. They're going to haunt me for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And that has to have brought a big smile to Kaylin's face.
Yeah.
To see that you two have stayed on this and stayed on this and stayed on this until he finally just said, I quit.
Yep.
I give
She
up.
would be very proud of us.
Well,
very proud.
I hope you're very proud of yourselves. And God bless and congratulate both of you for doing it. I'm sorry that you had to, but I'm awful glad that you did.
Yes.
And you may very well have saved this woman's life that he was with.
Yeah.
She was reaching out for help, calling the police, and so you stepping in and getting him off the street, you may very well have saved her life and that child's life.
I've thought about that many times.
So know that you did a service to your own daughter, and you also saved that woman's life and her child, in my opinion. I've just seen the patterns. I'm just telling you, you did. How do you want your daughter to be remembered?
We now return to a Dr. Phil exclusive.
When I'm in this room, I feel like I feel close to her. If these walls could talk, it would just tell so many good stories about Kaylin. And I can still hear a lot of laughter in this room from her and her friends being in here. Lots of giggles, lots of sleepovers, lots of good, special memories within this room right here. I feel her presence in this room, and I'm really missing her. I'll come and just sit on her bed, and I just talk to her. And she talks to me. I can feel her.
How do you want your daughter to be remembered?
Oh, she was wonderful to be around. She was intelligent. She was loving, very kind. I would want her to be remembered with the laughter that you would hear from her. She had this special laugh. And when she would laugh, it would make you laugh. I think I'd want her to be remembered as courageous, because she was courageous. I think she tried to fix a situation that was unfixable.
I know she's proud of what you've done, and I hope she's really aware of everything that's going on right now.
I think she is.
Yeah, I do too.
This is how I know Kaylin is around me. Our favorite thing was the Covered Bridge Festival. It's a big festival. So after she passed away, I had a hard time going back there. The whole trip there, I was in tears. And so I talked to Kaylin and I said, let me know you're here, Kay. I need you. I can't do this without you. We entered the festival. There's a booth that was selling these rocks, and they had names on them. And so I go to the case. I walk over, pick up the first rock on top, turn it over, and it was Kaylin's name. I didn't even have to dig for it.
And that's not a very common name.
Mm-mm.
There it was.
And I turned around and I showed him that rock. Amazing. I said, okay, Kay, I know you're here. You're here.
You know that she wants you to have joy in your heart when you think about her and not pain, right? You want you to celebrate her life, not grieve her death. Because both of you described her as just all joy, right? I mean, you'd laugh and fun and everything.
Oh, she's a character.
She was funny.
Yeah. And
funny girl.
And if you think about anything else when you think of her, you know, that's a real disservice to her, because it's, you know, that betrays her memory.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough living without your child and knowing how they died, but we know how Kaylin would want us to live.
Yeah, well, I admire your courage and I admire your commitment. You guys are the best. All right. Okay, thank you, guys. Again, we conducted this interview before the pandemic hit, but we wanted to make sure that Kaylin and her parents' story was told. This past September, Connor Scott was sentenced to 37 years in prison, followed by 3 years on parole for first-degree murder. He will not be eligible for early release. Kaylin's family say they wish he had gotten more time, but I know they feel some peace now that some justice has now been served for their beautiful daughter. She will never be forgotten. I want to thank them for being my guest and for sharing their story. For more information, go to drphil.com. Thanks for watching.
How long will I love you? As long as stars are above you. And longer if I can. How long will I need you? As long as the seasons need to.
She was courageous. She was determined. She was just a wonderful gal to be around with.
How long will I be with you? As long as the sea is bound to wash upon the sand. How long will I want you?
She was playful and fun and very loving. She always looked at the positives. She was a very special girl.
Very protective over her family.
How long will I hold you? As long as your father told you. How long will I love you? above you.
Memories can kill ya, but it didn't hear ya. I thought that I could fly, but woke up on the asphalt. I swear there was the last time. I've always been naive. Call it.